The day dawned sunny and bright, filling me with a sense of optimism. I woke up early, excited to slip into my beautiful gown. It was simple, elegant, and I thought it was perfect. But the second I stepped out to show Alex's family, I saw Sheila's eyebrows shoot up in a combination of disbelief and mockery.
Oh, you chose that. It's an interesting choice.
Yes, I love it, I managed to reply, swallowing the lump in my throat. Alex was standing next to her, arms crossed, eyes disinterested. You look nice, he said with all the enthusiasm of someone commenting on a weather forecast.
Are you okay?
I forced a smile and nodded. Yes, of course. The ceremony itself was a surreal experience. I remember walking down the aisle, my eyes meeting Alex. He looked as if he was fulfilling an obligation rather than marrying the woman he loved. Holy matrimony. It's more like a business transaction, I remember thinking bitterly. But when it was time for the vows, I poured my heart out, expressing my love, my commitment, my willingness to make this work. Do you, Kate, take Alex to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do, my voice wavered. Do you, Alex, take Kate to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, he mumbled, finally meeting my eyes but only to quickly look away. We were pronounced husband and wife, and even our kiss felt perfunctory, mechanical. Sheila came rushing toward us as we descended from the altar, pulling Alex into a hug that seemed to last forever. You've made a fine choice, son, she whispered into his ear, glaring at me over his shoulder. After the ceremony, the reception was equally uncomfortable. Sheila dominated the room, her voice drowning out the laughter and chatter, reducing my own family to mere spectators at the circus. Can we talk? I pulled him aside, desperation creeping into my voice.
Share what's up.
Is that you really want this marriage a quintil of this life? It's too late for that now, isn't it? He shrugged, dismissing my concerns like he was flicking away a piece of lint. But as we left the venue, waving goodbye to the last of the guests, I felt a strange emptiness envelop me. I was a newlywed, but I felt incredibly alone. Exhaling, I guess we should go home, Alex sighed as if the idea was deeply unappealing to him. Yes, I said, we should. And so we did, driving off in a car festooned with just married signs and tin cans, a caricature of matrimonial bliss. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of Sheila's triumphant smile, and this wasn't just my wedding that went awry. It was the prelude to a life that was built on someone else's terms. But I didn't yet know how much worse things were going to get, or how I would eventually turn the tables. The house was beautiful, nestled in a prestigious neighborhood, and built with exquisite craftsmanship. I spent years working my way up the corporate ladder to afford a place like this, and it was a haven for me, a sanctuary. Or at least it used to be. That's about 2 weeks after we moved in, Alex's parents, Sheila and Mark, decided to pay us a visit. Such a sense of dread filled the pit of my stomach as I heard Alex's voice on the phone, confirming the date and time of their visit. They're coming on Saturday, he mentioned, hanging up the phone. I can't wait, I said, sarcasm dripping from my words like honey from a spoon. That Saturday, I went out of my way to make the place inviting. Fresh flowers adorned the tables, The house smelled of freshly baked cookies, and I had a lovely dinner plan. The doorbell rang precisely at 5 o'clock, and Alex rushed to welcome his parents. "You have a lovely home," Sheila started, her eyes sweeping the place as if searching for defects. "Thank you. It's good to have you here," I replied, swallowing my apprehension. As we took a tour of the house, I couldn't help but notice Sheila's snide comments and Merk's quiet disdain. Every compliment was a backhanded insult, every smile a sneer in disguise. "It's the living room," I announced. I thought the open space was very inviting. "Ah, it's quite quaint," Sheila said, a disapproving look flitting across her face. "Quaint?" I said, trying to maintain my composure. "This is a spacious room, Mom." Alex chimed in, but his voice lacked conviction. It was as if he was speaking just to fill the silence that followed his mother's criticism. "And this is the kitchen. I love cooking, so I made sure to get all the modern appliances." "That's nice, but perhaps not as nice as the one we had in our old house," Sheila remarked, glancing at her husband for confirmation. Mark nodded in agreement, missing the point that their old kitchen was outdated and cramped. The tour ended, but the tension remained, filling the air like heavy fog. Dinner was an exercise in endurance. Sheila critiqued every dish, Mark barely spoke, and Alex seemed to drift further away with every comment. Further away with every passing moment. By the end of the evening, I felt emotionally drained, as if I'd just run a marathon without any training. As they left, Sheila leaned in to give me a hug, a gesture so stiff and mechanical. It felt like being embraced by a mannequin.
Thank you for having us, Kate. You've done a decent job with the place, given what you had to work with.
As the door closed behind them, a realization washed over me. This wasn't just my home that was being critiqued and belittled. It was my life, my choices, my very existence. Alex walked past me to clear the table, his face a mask of indifference. "Your mom has a unique way of giving compliments," I said, unable to hold back my frustration.
She means well, Alex shrugged, sidestepping the issue as always.
"Does she? Let's not make a big deal out of this," Kate, Alex cautioned, but it was too late. To the home that I had built with so much care and love had transformed into a battleground. It was no longer a sanctuary, but a cage. And it was becoming painfully clear that the biggest battles lay ahead, not behind. I'm Kate, and this was supposed to be our home, a beginning of our life together. Instead, it felt like a stage where a distorted drama was being played out, and I was both the audience and the actor, unable to exit the show. And that's how life continued. Each family visit more strained than the last, each dinner more silent, each shared moment a sham. What was worse was that the lead actor in this tragic play, my husband Alex, was not only indifferent to my plight, but was slowly becoming an active participant in the farce that our life was turning. The sun had barely set, and I was going through some work emails when I heard it. A knock on the door that seemed louder and more ominous than it should have. Alex, who had lately developed a habit of lounging on the couch with a bottle of whiskey, stood up. "I'll get it," he slurred, placing the bottle on the coffee table with a thud. Curiosity got the better of me. I followed him to the door and watched as he greeted a middle-aged man in a neatly pressed suit. "Good evening, Alex, Jim," Alex replied, extending his hand for a shake. "This is Kate, my wife's," he introduced me. "Kate, this is Jim, a real estate agent." The introduction struck me as odd. Why would a real estate agent be visiting us? But before I could voice my question, Alex led Jim to the living room. "So have you told her yet, Jim?" he asked, taking a seat. Jim looked at me, then back at Alex. "Told me what?" I interjected, feeling my stomach churn. Alex sighed, a heavy, irritated sigh. He paused. "Look, I've been talking to Jim here about selling the house," he finally said. "Selling the house? Our house?" I asked, dumbfounded. "Why? My parents need a new place," he replied. Alex said, avoiding eye contact, "that we need a new place. I thought we could sell this house and give them the money since we aren't using all the space. But this is my house bought with my money before we even got married, and you want to sell it without even asking me." My voice had reached a pitch I didn't even know I was capable of. "I thought you'd understand," Alex mumbled, finally meeting my eyes, but only to gauge my reaction. "Understand? You want me to understand that you plan to sell my hard-earned property to gift your parents a house? What part of that am I supposed to understand? Alex, I'm sure we can find another place, one that's cheaper," I cut him off. "One that your parents approve of? Is that it?" Jim sensed the tension and stood up. "Maybe I should come back another time." "No, you should leave and never come back." I directed my words at Jim, but glared at Alex. After Jim left, the house felt smaller, as if the walls had closed in on me. Alex returned to his whiskey, taking even larger swigs than before. "So what now?" I asked, my voice tinged with bitterness. "I don't know, Kate," he said, gulping down another mouthful. "I thought you'd be on board with this." I guess I was wrong. For the first time, I looked at Alex and saw a stranger. My husband, the man I had vowed to spend my life with, was an enigma, a puzzle whose pieces didn't fit together. The wheels in my mind started turning, plotting, planning. I felt like I had woken up from a long, unsettling dream, and the reality was harsh but clarifying. The veil had been lifted, and now it was time to act. Days after the disastrous meeting with the real estate agent, I took a personal day off work. I was not going to spend it wallowing in self-pity or doubt. I had a plan. I contacted a lawyer, an old friend from college who had specialized in family law, and arranged for a consultation.
It's been ages, so how have you been?
Sarah greeted me warmly as I entered her office. "Not good, Sarah. Not good at all," I said, taking the seat across from her desk. We dived into the details. The house bought with my money before marriage, the constant belittling from my in-laws, and Alex's plans to sell the house out from under me.
Seems to me like you're standing on solid ground if you decide to go for a divorce, Sarah said, her fingers drumming a quick, thoughtful rhythm on the desk. Since the house was purchased before the marriage, and with your own money, it's separate property. It would be very difficult for him to claim any right to it.
Divorce is a big step. I hesitated, my fingers toying nervously with my wedding ring.
It shins, but sometimes it's the only way to protect yourself.
That night, when Alex arrived home, late and reeking of alcohol as had become the norm, I decided it was time to have the talk. To Alex, we need to discuss something important, I said, sitting on the living room couch where he had spent so many of his recent evenings.
Oh, what is it?
I've been thinking about us, about our marriage, and where it's going. I began, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me.
Okay.
I've decided that your parents should sell their old house and move in with us for a while. Since you're so keen on providing for them, let's all live under the same roof, I proposed.
Glee.
You're okay with that? I think it's the best solution given the circumstances, I said, fighting to keep my face neutral. Wow, Kate. I didn't expect you to agree, he said, genuine surprise coloring his voice. I'll tell my parents first thing tomorrow. As you wish, I replied, my words tinged with a coldness he failed to detect. At hints the decision was made, the line drawn. A pincery, I was no longer the compliant, submissive wife who would bow down to her husband's will or his family's for that matter. From that point on, I became the architect of my destiny, and what followed would send ripples through the dysfunctional dynamics of our married life. It didn't take long for Alex's parents, Sheila and Mike, to move in. 2 days after our conversation, Alex enthusiastically informed me they had sold their old house and were ready to make the transition. Kate, you're an angel for letting us stay here.
Sheila cooed, but her eyes held a different message.
That's the house. Once my sanctuary started to feel like a cage. The walls were closing in on me again, but this time it wasn't just metaphorical.
That's the kitchen is just too small, Sheila declared during dinner one night.
Back in our old house, we had a kitchen twice this size. Well, Sheila, this house may not be perfect, but it's what we have, I said, holding back the urge to snap back at her. But Kate's right, Alex chimed in, surprisingly. Actually, we should make the best out of the situation. Sheila shot him a disapproving look, but said nothing more. Next days passed in a blur of passive-aggressive comments, veiled insults, and an ever-growing tension that hung in the air like a dark cloud. I held my tongue, biding my time, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My lawyer friend Sarah had informed me that she was gathering all the necessary documents and evidence for the impending divorce case. It was a ticking time bomb, and the clock was winding down. The clock was winding down fast. 16:51. In the evening, when everyone was gathered in the living room, I decided it was time to drop the first bombshell. Sleepy Bayeks, we should think about buying a new house. A bigger, better one, I proposed, watching their faces closely. A new house? With what money? Alex asked, puzzled. We can use the money from the sale of your parents' house, I suggested. It only makes sense, right? Etiquette, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of uncertainty in Sheila's eyes. She glanced at Mike, who looked equally confused. Are you sure, Kate? Alex finally said, disbelief coloring his voice. I've never been surer, I responded, my gaze locking onto his. It's time for a fresh start. But the wheels were set in motion. Biting them into my home, into my life. I had given them just enough room. And now, as I sat in the living room of the house they had so coveted but never respected, they had unwittingly begun to tie their own nooses. It was only a matter of time before they'd find themselves ensnared in the very trap they thought they had set for me. Sarah was with me as we walked into the courtroom. Her calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "I'll rise for the Honorable Judge Thompson," the bailiff announced. We took our seats after the judge entered and settled in. Sarah was articulate and precise, laying out the facts clearly. The house was purchased before the marriage, with my own money, and was therefore not marital property. Moreover, the emotional abuse and the secret plans to sell the house were grounds for divorce, she argued.
Your Honor, my client has been the victim of emotional manipulation and deceit throughout her marriage.
The respondent, along with his parents, has constantly berated and belittled her. Thus we present evidence in the form of text messages, emails, and witness statements to support these claims. The judge looked over the documents, occasionally asking Sarah or Alex's lawyer for clarification. Then came the time for the judgment. But in light of the evidence presented, the judge began his gaze shifting from the documents to the faces in front of him. It's clear that the marital home in this case is the separate property of the petitioner, Mrs. Kate. As for the emotional distress caused by Mr. Alex and his parents, while it may not have direct legal ramifications on the property division, it certainly sets the context for this marriage and its unfortunate dissolution. My heart soared at his words. I glanced at Alex and his parents. Their faces were ashen, a look of utter disbelief in their eyes. "Divorce is granted," the judge announced. "The marital home shall remain with Miss S. Kate," the judge announced. "Mr. Alex and his parents are to vacate the premises within 1 week," the judge concluded.
Thank you, Your Honor, Sarah said, turning to give me a look that screamed, "We did it."
As the judge left the courtroom, Alex approached me, his eyes filled with a strange mixture of anger and defeat. "Was it all worth it, Kate?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper.
"I think the real question is, was it worth it for you?" I replied, meeting his gaze squarely. "After love and partnership. You and your parents chose to repay it with deceit and cruelty. So tell me, was it worth it?" He looked at me for a moment, his eyes searching for something. Perhaps the woman he once knew, the woman he had forever lost. Then, without another word, he turned away. The court had spoken. That was the end of a harrowing chapter in my life, and as I stood there, divorce papers in hand, I realized it was also the beginning of something new. Seas, a life where I no longer had to look over my shoulder, where I could lay down my armor and be just Kate. Flawed, human, but most importantly, free. It took a week for Alex and his parents to move out, each day punctuated by icy glances and hushed conversations. I walked through the house after they left, reclaiming the space inch by inch. It felt bigger, quieter, like a wound slowly healing. Sarah came over that day, a bottle of champagne in hand. To new beginnings, she toasted, clinking her glass against mine. "New beginnings," I echoed. "Are you going to stay in this house?"
"We did good, Kate," she said, settling into the sofa.
"We did. I nodded, still somewhat in disbelief at how everything had turned out. I'd been thinking about that, I admitted. It's strange, this place has so many memories, both good and bad. But it's still my home. I think I'm going to stay.
Then let's make it yours again, she said, setting down her glass.
It was time for a change. I hired contractors to remodel the kitchen and the living room, changing the flooring, painting the walls, and making the house feel like mine again. But the biggest transformation was perhaps in me. For so long, I had let people walk over me, control me, and make decisions for me. But no more. Up to the day the renovations were complete, I stood in the middle of my living room and took it all in. It was beautiful, inviting, and warm, just like a home should be. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Alex. "I hope you're happy," it read. I looked at it for a long moment, then typed out my reply. "I am, and I hope you find what you're looking for too." I pressed send, and a strange sense of finality washed over me. It was over. The chapter was closed. For the first time in a long while, I slept peacefully, knowing that when I woke up, I'd be waking up to a day that belonged solely to me. A torrid day without judgment, the day without judgments, without manipulations, without fearing what lay ahead. It was just another day, perhaps, but for me, it was the first day of the rest of my life. And I knew, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, that there were better days ahead, days of healing, of growth, of love, and yes, days of inevitable struggles. But whatever those days held, they would be mine to face in a home that was unequivocally mine.